is authorized to declare recess of the committee at any time. Without objection, all members shall have 5 legislative days within which to submit additional materials to the chair for inclusion in the record. Quorum being present, we will now proceed to today's business, and the chair will now recognize himself for an opening statement. The committee meets today to consider 6 bills, all of which have previously received overwhelming bipartisan support in our committee, and all of which are designed to help promote a healthier economy. All 6 bills have originated in the House, and just this morning, our counterparts on the Senate Banking Committee approved these 6 House bills with strong support from both Republicans and Democrats. In fact, it went beyond strong support. All bills were voice voted. In other words, no dissent. All members agreed on all 6 bills, and I'm hopeful we can do the same thing today here in our committee. As we know, small business owners are the heart and soul of our American economy. They're the innovators, the entrepreneurs, and the risk takers whose imagination, skills, and hard work create jobs and opportunities for the future. They're the first ones into work each day and usually the last to get paid. They help create more than 60% of the nation's net new jobs over the last 2 decades. So if our nation is to have a healthy and resilient economy that lifts up everyone, then small business growth and small business startups must be a priority. A new small business starts with an idea, but in between the first brainstorm and the grand opening, a small business must have access to the credit and capital that's necessary to turn that dream into reality. Yet today, many small companies cannot access the credit and capital they need to open their doors, grow, and create jobs. We heard from countless witnesses who have appeared before us, community banks and credit unions, the primary source of small business loans. They're just drowning in complicated regulations and a maze of burdensome securities regulations, often written for large companies, but yet they fall heaviest on our small companies. Washington needs to work for small business on Main Street and not just those who can afford to hire armies of lawyers and can take advantage of bureaucratic rules and regulations. Instead, we must level the playing field for small businesses by streamlining regulations. We need smart regulations that maintain fair and efficient markets, protect investors, and still allow small competitors the chance to succeed. And we can start today with these bills that will remove barriers to job creation and put us on a path to a sustained economic recovery. 6 bills we'll discuss today by themselves won't fix our economy, but they are certainly part of the solution, and they are certainly bipartisan. The smartest way to protect investors is by fostering vibrant capital markets that allow our economy to flourish and that are vigorously policed for fraud and deception. So I want to thank today the Vice Chair of our committee, Mr. McHenry, Mr. Hill, Mr. Meeks, Mr. Poliquin, Ms. Velasquez, and Mr. Holtgren, members on both sides of the aisle for their contributions in bringing these good bills forward. I want to commend all sponsors, again, on both sides of the aisles, and the co-sponsors on both sides of the aisles for these bills. And for bringing these worthy ideas forward, I urge all members to support their efforts today. And I yield back the balance of my time, and I now yield to the ranking member for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today, we will consider a set of legislative proposals designed to improve our nation's capital markets, which continue to be the envy of the world. One important and long overdue bill we will consider will provide investors in Puerto Rico with the same critical investor protections as other American investors. Other bills on the agenda support capital formation, particularly for small businesses and promising startups. Most of the bills before us are the product of healthy collaboration and dialogue, and I'd like to thank my colleagues on both sides of the aisle for working together to craft common sense changes to our securities laws. As I've said before, it is critical that our capital market system is balanced, providing adequate investor protections to ensure market integrity, while also allowing for robust capital formation. After all, it is ultimately the investors who provide the capital needed for our businesses to grow and thrive. However, I am concerned that by rushing these bills to markup, we're denying our 14 new members on the committee and the millions of Americans they represent the opportunity to fully understand the issues through hearings. While I appreciate the efforts of the committee on these matters during past Congresses, it is important that we all make the most informed decisions possible. To that end, I'd like to point out several more pressing issues to support our economy under the committee's jurisdiction that deserve and require our immediate attention. We need to reauthorize the National Flood Insurance Program, which is set to expire this year. We need to reform our nation's broken consumer credit reporting system, and we need to address homelessness. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to keep repeating this point over and over again. There are over 500,000 homeless people in America today. Over 1/5 of the people experiencing homelessness are children, and nearly 7% are veterans. There is simply no excuse for this committee to continue to ignore these Americans. Moreover, while today's markup shows that we're able to work together to achieve bipartisan consensus, I question whether we have the whole story on the majority's plans for these capital market issues. Versions of these bills, which are different from the versions we will be marking up today, have been reported to be in the new version of the Chairman's Wrong Choice Act. So I'm concerned about which versions of these bills will be moving to the floor. Again, I thank my colleagues on both sides of the aisle for working together on these bills, and I hope, Mr. Chairman, that this markup shows that we're going to be moving forward, not backwards, on the progress we've made. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back. Now pursuant to notice, I call up H.R. 1219. The clerk will report the bill, which was distributed in advance.
H.R. 1219 to amend the Investment Company Act of 1940.
Without objection, the bill is considered read and open to amendment at any point. The chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McHenry, the sponsor of the legislation, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly appreciate your leadership. Thank you for having this markup today. And today's early stage companies are the source for American innovation, economic growth, and jobs. But fundamentally, funding these early stage companies remains a major challenge. Investing in startup companies is inherently risky, which is why many investors who qualify to become angel investors often shy away from it. This is a major hurdle facing small and early stage businesses that are struggling to find capital, particularly in parts of the country like my district in western North Carolina. If you're in Austin, Boston, Silicon Valley, your access to capital is unrivaled in the world. If you're in the rest of the country, we have an enormous challenge to meet these demands. Folks in my district in small counties have actually lost more businesses than they have created in recent years. Small counties like those that I represent in western North Carolina are disproportionately impacted. And so we have to do everything we can here in Washington to reverse this trend. That's why addressing the challenges facing angel investing is a great first step. This can be accomplished by changing our mindset and creating a regulatory framework that encourages innovation and growth while also ensuring that shareholder and investor protections remain strong. This bill does that. While the Jobs Act lifted the shareholder limit to 2,000, it left in place the 100 investor limit for angel investment funds. As a result, many investors who want to become angels are excluded from investing, and many early stage companies fail to acquire the capital they need to get off the ground. To address this problem, Representative Velasquez and I joined together in reintroducing this bill I filed last Congress that amends the Investment Company Act of 1940 by increasing the investor limitation from 100 to 250 for qualifying venture funds, which are narrowly tailored for early stage investing. Our bill would open up angel investing to more accredited investors, allow for early stage companies to raise capital they need to grow and create jobs. After all, that's why we're here, isn't it? I also am pleased that companion legislation has been introduced and was marked up and voice voted out of the Senate Banking Committee this morning with the co-sponsorship of Senator Heller and Senator Heitkamp. My hope is that with their efforts combined with ours here today, this important legislation can become law. The bottom line is that this legislation is a sensible way to get more capital to startups and small businesses. It will allow for asset diversification for angel investors, more access to capital for companies, and ultimately more good-paying jobs. I'd like to thank the chairman, Chairman Henseling, Ranking Member Waters, Representative Velasquez, and all the committee staff on both sides of the aisle for working hard on this bipartisan bicameral legislation. We'd like to see it done today. I thank you for your support, and I yield back the balance.
Would you yield to the chair?
Be very happy to yield to the chairman.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I just want to thank the gentleman for his leadership, that, and the gentlelady from New York as well, working on a bipartisan basis. Again, we know that entrepreneurship is at a generational low. This is a bill that will raise a threshold that hasn't been raised since the time that before most of us were born. It needs to be increased. It's a very important piece of legislation, and I hope that all members will join in supporting this piece of legislation. I yield back to the gentleman, and the gentleman yields.
And I yield back.
Who seeks recognition? For what purposes? Gentlelady from New York seek recognition.
Strike the last word.
Gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me start off by thanking Mr. McHenry for working with me on this bill. And also, I want to thank the ranking member. Without her leadership and the work of her staff, this bill would not have happened. So I'm very grateful. Throughout my career here in Congress, I have always supported and encouraged legislation that creates jobs and fosters innovation for America's entrepreneurs and small businesses. And today, I am proud to co-sponsor H.R. 1219, the Supporting America's Innovators Act, with Mr. McHenry. Our bill will allow up to 200 accredited investors, those investors with at least $200,000 in minimum income or $300,000 for a couple or someone with $1 million in net assets, to invest in a venture fund, provided the fund does not have more than $10 million in investor capital. The Investment Company Act of 1940 currently limits the number of accredited investors in a venture fund to no more than 100 individuals. While funds can currently have up to 100 investors, most funds try not to reach that limit in order to adjust for unforeseen circumstances where shares will have to be divided, such as in the case of a death or divorce of the primary investor. The Investment Company Act's barrier of no more than 100 individual investors artificially limits the number of individuals that can invest in small businesses and startups. Many of these investors pool their money together, either in local or national groups, or more recently through the online crowdfunding platforms, which we created throughout the Jobs Act, which they then use to support America's entrepreneurs and invest in our early-stage startups. Our bill will help catalyze investment opportunity for groups who invest nationally in women-owned and led companies, as well as angel groups and online accredited platforms that invest locally. By allowing these funds to attract more investors and leverage those investors for greater investment, we're helping to provide much-needed early-stage capital with the goal of creating new American jobs. It is important to note that the individuals investing in these funds already meet the SEC definition of an accredited investor. They are therefore comfortable with the risk inherent in investing in early-stage companies, which may not necessarily succeed. I'm proud that our bipartisan legislation has garnered a wide range of attention and support from the industry, groups like Angel Capital Association and the Internet Association, groups that are dedicated to expanding capital opportunities for small businesses and growing the American economy. Last Congress, our committee passed a nearly identical version of this bill, H.R. 4854, with a broad bipartisan vote of 57-2. That bill later passed the House in an equally impressive fashion with a vote of 388-9. Again, a vote for this bill is a vote for America's entrepreneurs and small businesses, and I hope everyone will join Mr. McHenry and me in voting for this bill. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.
Gentlelady yields back. Who seeks recognition? For what purposes the ranking member seek recognition?
Move to strike the last word.
Gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word. H.R. 1219 is a product of successful bipartisan negotiations that achieves the appropriate balance between capital formation and investor protection. Specifically, this bill would provide a narrow exemption from the definition of an investment company for qualifying venture capital funds with no more than 250 investors and only $10 million in capital contributions and commitments. This exemption will allow angel investor groups to better pool their resources among more accredited investors to make targeted, high-impact investments in our nation's proven job creators, startup companies. According to Angel's List, a proponent of the bill, a similar structure is currently used in private offerings to allow accredited investors to pool their money into a special purpose fund to invest together in startup companies. This structure benefits startups which, rather than dealing with hundreds of direct investors, are able to raise funds and handle other corporate actions by simply dealing with a fund manager. This structure also benefits investors, which can rely on the fund manager who acts on their behalf and has a fiduciary duty to the fund. This is particularly beneficial for startup investors who, recognizing that most early-stage companies fail, typically diversify among 30 to 80 companies. H.R. 1219 is appropriately tailored to venture capital funds, which must invest at least 80% of their committed capital in the equity of small companies. In addition, the exemption caps those funds at 250 investors and $10 million in capital, ensuring that they are small enough that investors are able to monitor and manage their investments with the funds. These limits also ensure that we aren't creating a loophole for genuine investment companies like mutual funds to avoid regulation, nor are we providing relief to other private funds, like hedge funds, that have very little restrictions and investors' protections. I'd like to thank Mr. McHenry and Ms. Velasquez for working with me on the bill to provide targeted relief for our nation's startups and the investors that take a chance on them. I encourage my colleagues to join me in supporting the bill and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back. Who seeks recognition? For what purpose does the gentlelady from New York seek recognition?
Well, I move to strike the
This
last.
gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. How do I turn this thing on? I want to speak out strongly in support of my good friend and colleague Nydia Velasquez and Mr. McHenry's bill. The bill is intended to make it easier for startup companies to raise money for sophisticated investors. They do this by increasing the number of investors who can invest in venture capital funds that are exempt from SEC oversight. And venture capital funds are the really growing a pot of money for startups and small businesses and investment in really growing our economy. Under current law, a fund can be exempt from SEC oversight if it has fewer than 100 investors and its securities are not offered publicly. A fund with fewer than 100 investors, which is not marketed publicly, poses fewer investor protection concerns than large funds that has a lot of retail investors in them. So this exemption is very appropriate. This is also the exemption that the majority of venture capital funds rely on. This allows investors to pool their money and go in together, and a lot of sophisticated investors like to do this. They have asked for this. Specifically, it has limited ability right now for angel investors, many of whom are located in the district I represent, to coordinate their investments by grouping together in a single venture capital fund. It's narrowly tailored to avoid raising investor protection concerns. It only raises the investor threshold to 250 for venture capital funds that meet the SEC's rigorous 5-part definition of a venture capital fund. And finally, the bill is limited to funds that have less than $10 million in capital invested. So we're only providing relief to relatively small venture capital funds that do not pose a huge risk to the markets. They are far more safe than hedge funds and venture capital private equity funds. The bill is a product of genuine bipartisanship compromise, and Ranking Member Waters and Chairman Henserling, thank you for working so closely and supportively to Mr. McHenry and Ms. Velasquez. I urge a strong bipartisan vote. This bill passed earlier this morning at 10:30 by voice vote in the Senate. And I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Is there any further discussion or amendments to the bill? If not, the question now occurs on ordering the bill reported favorably to the House. Those in favor shall signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed shall signify by saying nay. In the opinion of the chair, for what purposes, gentlemen? Recorded vote has been requested. All those in favor of recorded vote shall raise their hand and be counted. A sufficient number having raised their hands, a recorded vote is so ordered, and pursuant to subsection C5 of Rule 3 of the committee rules, the vote on this question is postponed. Now, pursuant to notice, I call up H.R. 910. The clerk will report the bill, which was distributed in advance.
H.R. 910, to direct the Securities and Exchange Commission to provide a safe harbor.
Without
relating to
objection, the
certain-
bill is considered read and open to amendment at any point. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arkansas to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute. Does the gentleman have an amendment at the desk?
Yes.
Copies of the amendment have already been distributed and are on the dais. The clerk will report.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute offered by Mr. Hill. Strike all after the enacting clause.
Without
insert the
objection,
following.
the amendment is considered read and will serve as base text for purposes of amendment. The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman. I appreciate your leadership on holding this markup today and that of the ranking member. Appreciate the opportunity to work across the aisle in this Congress, as we did in the previous Congress, on this bill today, the Fair Access to Investment Research Act, a common sense, bipartisan, bicameral effort to increase access to research and information for exchange-traded funds, or ETFs. Having worked in the banking and investment industry for the past 3 decades before coming to Congress, I witnessed firsthand the explosive growth in the ETF industry. Starting with my latest firm in the late 1990s, I've seen exchange-traded funds grow from about 100 funds with $100 billion in total assets to over 1,800 funds having some $3 trillion in assets today. However, despite this rapid growth and popularity in the ETF market and their increasing importance to retail investors, most broker-dealers do not publish research on ETFs due to anomalies in the securities laws and regulations. The SEC has implemented safe harbors for research in support of various asset classes, including listed equities, corporate debt, and closed-end funds. In the Jobs Act, Congress also provided an explicit safe harbor for research related to emerging growth companies. However, despite their similarities to these asset classes, ETFs do not benefit from that kind of similar safe harbor. Providing a safe harbor for ETF research is also not a novel concept to the Commission, who has looked at granting safe harbors for ETF research on multiple occasions, but despite support for this concept, never quite got around to it, given their 50 front burners, Mr. Chairman. The Fair Access to Investment Research Act simply directs the SEC to provide a safe harbor for research reports that cover ETFs, so that those reports are not considered an offer under Section 5 of the Securities Act of 1933, which governs, and that will, in my view, increase access to investment information for consumers and improve efficiency of the capital markets. If the Commission does not act within a 270-day period following enactment of this bill, an interim safe harbor mirroring the existing safe harbors will be effective until the Commission finalizes rules in this area. I've been working on this bill, started working on this bill not long after I came to Congress in 2015. Last Congress, my former colleague and our new governor of Delaware, John Carney, and I partnered to address this anomaly in the securities law, and I'm very pleased to be working in this Congress with my friend, the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Foster, to see this common sense provision implemented. Last Congress, the text of H.R. 910 passed the House with overwhelming support by a vote of 411 to 6. The amendment to H.R. 910 that I've introduced today makes only minor tweaks to the underlying bill to reflect the bipartisan compromise made in the Senate on this bill, which was marked up in the Senate Banking Committee this morning. This bill, Mr. Chairman, in no way undermines or eliminates any investor protections in the federal securities laws or the SEC's ability to oversee the registration and sale of ETF securities. This bill, in fact, specifically notes that these are only available to research, not to any other aspect of the securities laws, and anyone offering research under this act will, of course, comply with all other federal securities laws, anti-fraud statutes, and the like. Given the importance of ETFs to the market and the 6 million or so U.S. households holding ETFs, steps to facilitate research and allow investors better access to more useful information is long overdue. I'd like to thank my colleagues, Congressman Foster and Governor Carney, Senators Heller and Peters, Mrs. Maloney, and the staff on both sides of the aisle for all of their hard work on this common sense proposal to provide more information to American retail investors, and I encourage my colleagues to support this bill. I yield
Would the gentleman yield to the chairman?
I would yield to the chairman.
I thank the gentleman for his leadership. I want to thank the gentleman from Illinois as well on the other side of the aisle for his leadership, and again, coming together on a bipartisan basis to take care of what the gentleman from Arkansas aptly described as an anomaly. ETFs have exploded onto the investment scene. It is important that investors not be denied useful information that they need to decide whether or not this investment product is right for them. This takes care of this anomaly. Again, it was passed on a bipartisan basis in the Senate. I hope we'll do the same here today. I thank the gentleman from Arkansas. I'll yield back to the gentleman from Arkansas. I assume he yields back his time. Who seeks recognition? For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Move to strike the last
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you also to my colleague from Arkansas, Mr. Hill, for his years of hard bipartisan work that went into this bill. I'd like to thank the chairman and the ranking member for their work they and their staffs put in to make this happen and for their support in this markup. I'm proud to support this bill today because I believe it will strengthen the abilities of investors to make informed decisions. This legislation will add transparency to the financial markets and will ultimately benefit consumers. Exchange-traded funds are valuable and popular tools for investors to get exposure to diversified risks and returns through a single security with low overhead costs. They are, of necessity, very complicated products. They often can be thoroughly understood only by those with the background and the time to analyze the way the ETF is constructed, as well as the underlying securities. Retail investors and retirement savers often do not have this time and often do not have the experience in the markets. High-quality research can help people make informed decisions about which ETFs to invest in, equipping them to make decisions on how to diversify across different sectors and indices. ETFs are continuously issued, so they present unique potential risks to underwriting broker-dealers under the federal security laws. Generally, the federal security laws prohibit a broker-dealer in participating in a securities offering, who participates in a securities offering from publishing research 15 days before or 30 days after the issuance. This is to prevent fake research that could hype the security ahead of the offering or to try to puff its price afterwards. ETF pricing, however, reflects a wide variety of data across many issuers and classes of securities. Because they are continuously brought to market, it is necessary to provide a clarification in the law that research should be permitted because they are also continuously traded on the exchanges. I appreciate the work of my colleague, Mr. Hill, to ensure and clarify that the anti-fraud provisions of the securities laws will still apply. To be clear, this bill does not vitiate any rights of investors or responsibilities of broker-dealers with respect to the accuracy and truthfulness of their statements. Specifically, Section 2C1 provides that the anti-fraud and anti-manipulation provisions of the securities laws are not limited by anything in this bill. Moreover, this applies only to bona fide research, and FINRA can still require sales materials to be posted to the public. Section 2C2 preserves the power of the SROs to oversee all of the practices of the broker-dealers, including the publication of these reports. Lastly, the bill provides for a statutory safe harbor that the Commission not be able to promulgate any rule in the 270-day period established by this bill. The statutory safe harbor is only available to research on funds that have reported to the SEC for the last year, ensuring that it is true to the purpose of the bill, that to allow research to be used by investors for existing securities. Statutory safe harbors exist elsewhere in the federal securities laws. For example, Section 482 of the 1933 Act, which provides a statutory private offering exemption that can be perfected without relying on Regulation D. Although that safe harbor has been rarely used, it has been on the books without repeal since 1933, and I trust that the SEC will prescribe an appropriate set of rules consistent with Section 2A of this bill so that the regulatory safe harbor is safe and effective for investors. This is a common sense reform that passed the full House of Representatives 411-6 last Congress. Earlier today, it passed on a voice vote from the Senate Banking Committee. So I urge my colleagues to support this bill in this markup and when it comes to the floor. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back who seeks recognition. If there is no further I'm sorry, for what purpose does the gentlelady from New York seek recognition? The First Lady from New York, who I see to my right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If you can hit the microphone, please.
Thank you so much, and I support this bill, which is a strong, good faith compromise that will ultimately improve transparency in a very fast-growing market. It requires the SEC to update Rule 139, which provides a safe harbor for broker-dealer research on public companies like Apple, to include research on exchange-traded funds and other investment companies. ETFs have grown dramatically over the last 10 years, from roughly 200 billion to over 2 trillion. So it makes sense to get more research out there on ETFs. After all, if you're concerned about the growth of ETFs, then the last thing you want is less research. The Democratic witness at the Capital Markets Subcommittee hearing on this bill, Professor Mercer Bullard, said, and I quote, "The SEC should have had a completely different, much less regulated track for ETF research quite some time ago." He further pointed out that research on ETFs and other investment companies actually poses fewer risks than research on public companies because ETFs and investment companies are already subject to strict regulation under the Investment Company Act. This bill preserves the SEC's discretion to modify their research rules as needed in the future. This will allow the SEC to react to any future concerns that may come up in their research. The bill also has an important rule of construction, which makes it very clear that the bill in no way weakens any of the anti-fraud or anti-manipulation laws, all of which apply to ETF research reports. So I'd like to congratulate my good friend, Congressman Foster, and Mr. French Hill, who has worked very hard on this bill and whose background in investment banking and treasury will make him a real asset on this committee, along with Mr. Foster, who I think is our only scientist on the committee. And I'd also like to thank Mrs. Waters, who also put a great deal of time and work into this bill. I urge a strong yes vote on this bill. It passed in the Senate by voice vote earlier, as my colleague said. It's a good bill. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back who seeks recognition. There being no further discussion or amendments to the bill, the question now occurs on adoption of the substitute amendment offered by the gentleman from Arkansas. All those in favor shall signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed shall signify by saying nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes appear to have it, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The question now occurs on ordering the bill as amended, reported to the House with a favorable recommendation. Those in favor shall signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed shall signify by saying nay. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arkansas seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that there'd be a roll call vote.
A recorded vote has been requested. All those in favor of a recorded vote shall raise their hand and be counted. A sufficient number having raised their hands, a recorded vote is so ordered, and pursuant to subsection C5 of Rule 3 of the committee rules, the vote on this question is postponed. Now, pursuant to notice, I call up H.R. 1312. The clerk will report the bill, which was distributed in advance.
H.R. 1312, to amend the Small Business Investment Incentive Act of 1980.
Without objection, the
require-
bill is considered read and open to amendment at any point. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Maine, Mr. Poliquin, to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute. Does the gentleman have an amendment at the desk?
Yes, I do, sir.
Copies of the amendment have already been distributed and are on the dais. The clerk will report.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute offered by Mr. Poliquin. Strike all after the enacting
Without
clause.
objection, the amendment is considered read and will serve as base text for purposes of amendment. The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. I appreciate it, and I greatly thank you for your leadership in bringing this H.R. 1312 Small Business Capital Formation Enhancement Act for consideration during this markup. I also want to thank and greatly appreciate the work that my colleague on the other side of the aisle, Juan Vargas from California, has done. I greatly look forward to working with issue with you, Mr. Vargas, as we go forward. Mr. Chairman, as we all know, last year the full committee and the full House passed this common sense bill, and unfortunately it did not go forward in the Senate, but I know they're going to do a much better job this year, Mr. Chairman, in this new Congress. Those of us who have been small business owners in the past, Mr. Chairman, realize that it's not only lower regulations and predictable regulations and lower taxes and lower energy costs that help build companies, but it's hard work, it's access to capital. Whether you're building boats, Mr. Chairman, in Ellsworth, you're making paper in Madawaska, or you have a biotech firm in Lewiston, Maine, sir, you need capital, you need money, you need funding, you need to grow your company and to hire more workers. Every year, sir, the Securities and Exchange Commission holds a very useful and important forum. It's called the Government Business Forum on Capital Formation, and it's required by law. This forum, Mr. Chairman, brings together some of the most knowledgeable people in the respective space, attorneys from the SEC and the private sector, along with business professionals, and yes, academics also, to make sure they get together and they look at ways how to increase access to capital for small companies. And as we know, Mr. Chairman, small companies in America are the engine of growth and new opportunity and jobs. So my legislation, sir, is a very common sense, a very Maine common sense bill, and it simply asks the SEC at the end of each of these forums to report what actions it might take with respect to these recommendations instead of this information sitting on the shelf. So again, I would encourage everybody on both sides of the aisle to support this bill. I am grateful, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to present this. I am thankful for Mr. Vargas on his great work in doing so and in joining me in this work. And I'll also close by saying the following, Mr. Chairman. Out of committee last Congress, this bill passed 55-1. And on the floor of the House, sir, it passed 390-1 in a very bipartisan manner. So again, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I yield back my time.
Would you yield back to the chairman?
Yes, sir, I do.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. I want to thank him for his leadership, and we know him to be a vigorous advocate for all the small businesses in Maine. I also want to thank the gentleman from California for his leadership and the two gentlemen for reaching across the aisle. We know that this statutory obligation, frankly, is consistent with current requirements related to the findings and recommendations offered by the Investment Advisory Committee as required by Title IX of Dodd-Frank. And as the gentleman from Maine said, we simply want a response because, you know, historically the forum's recommendations are very valuable. They have been used as a basis for the very, very important Bipartisan Jobs Act. They deserve to be respected. They deserve to have some type of reaction by the SEC that too often doesn't quite take as seriously their capital formation mandate as they should. So I thank both gentlemen for their leadership. I would commend an aye vote to all members. I yield back to the gentleman from Maine. I assume he yields back.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask for a roll call vote, please.
Well, we're not quite there yet. Who seeks recognition?
Well, we are very quick in Maine, sir.
If no one seeks recognition, apparently the gentleman from Maine's wishes will be accomplished here. There being no further discussion or amendments to the bill, question now occurs on adoption of the substitute amendment offered by the gentleman from Maine. All those in favor shall signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed shall signify by saying nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes appear to have it, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The question now occurs on ordering the bill as amended reported to the House with a favorable recommendation. Those in favor shall signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed shall signify by saying nay. In the opinion of the chair, for what purpose does the gentleman from Maine seek recognition?
Let's ask for a roll call vote, sir.
Okay, now a roll call vote is asked for. So a recorded vote has been requested. All those in favor of a recorded vote shall raise their hand and be counted. A sufficient number having raised their hands, a recorded vote is so ordered, and pursuant to subsection C5 of Rule 3 of the committee rules, the vote on this question is postponed. Now, pursuant to notice, I call up H.R. 1366. The clerk will report the bill which was distributed in advance.
H.R. 1366 to amend the Investment Company
Without
Act of
objection, the bill
19
is considered read and open to amendment at any point. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Velasquez, the sponsor of the legislation, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Investment Company Act of 1940 governs investment companies such as mutual funds, closed-end funds, unit investment trusts, and exchange-traded funds. Its purpose is to protect investors in such funds and to provide for impartial oversight of these companies. This bill is the exact same as legislation this committee reported last June by a vote of 59-0 and passed the floor last July unanimously. In doing so, it regulates various transactions among affiliates, limits the amount of leverage they can undertake, outlines record-keeping requirements, and describes how securities may be redeemed and repurchased. These matters sound technical, but they provide fundamental protections for investors in U.S. investment companies. Due to a historical artifact, however, all funds that are located and organized in and sold only to residents of U.S. territories are exempted from the 1940 Act. The reason for such an exemption was that at the time the Act was being considered in 1940, the U.S. territories were deemed to be too distant from Washington, D.C., thus making travel to them cost-prohibitive. Obviously, the cost of air travel is no longer cost-prohibitive and not a reason to exempt territories from the 1940 Act. As a result of this exemption, investment companies located in U.S. territories can sell products to the residents and not be subject to the oversight, disclosure, and conflict of interest requirements that such companies located in the mainland USA are subject to. The outcome is that those located in the U.S. territories has been subject to investment losses, some resulting from behavior that likely would have been prohibited if the Act applied to the island's investment companies. To address this matter, H.R. 1366, the U.S. Territories Investor Protect Act, applies the 1940 Act to currently exempt investment companies that are located, organized in, and sold to residents of these territories. In order to permit investment companies to comply with the legislation, it provides for a 3-year compliance period with an option at the approval of the SEC for an additional 3 years. This time period balances the need to bring the investor protections of the 1940 Act to the territories with enough time for affected entities to fully understand and comply with the 1940 Act. It is important to note that if investment companies need further relief from any specific requirement of the 1940 Act, they are able to request such relief through the SEC under existing law. I want to thank Congressman Duffy and Congressman MacArthur, two of my colleagues from the Puerto Rico Task Force, for co-sponsoring this bill. I also want to thank Puerto Rico's new member of Congress, Jennifer Gonzalez, for co-sponsoring it as well, and also Senators Hatch and Menendez, who have put forward a companion bill today in the Senate, and in fact, it was voted by voice vote this morning. And finally, I'd like to thank Chairman Henserly and Ranking Members Waters for working with me throughout the last 2 years in a highly productive manner. Such cooperation was critical to developing an approach that will apply the Act in a manner sensitive to investors and investment companies. I urge members to support this legislation, and I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
Gentlelady yields back. Who seeks recognition? For what purposes the ranking member seek recognition?
Move to strike the last word.
Gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank Ms. Velasquez for her hard work on H.R. 1366 in this Congress and the last Congress to close an obvious and outdated loophole in the law. When Congress passed the Investment Company Act in 1940, it chose to exclude investment companies like mutual funds that are located and sold to Americans living in U.S. territories because of the difficulties and costs associated with monitoring those companies. But today, almost 77 years later, that exemption does not hold water, and Americans living in Puerto Rico and other U.S. territories deserve the same protections enjoyed by each of us. This is particularly true in light of recent abuses by UBS that was legally able to underwrite Puerto Rican municipal debt, package that debt into mutual funds, and then recommend those funds to Puerto Ricans. Such conflicts of interest are expressly prohibited under the Investment Company Act and should never have been allowed. Investors in that scheme who lost billions of dollars are now left with FINRA, arbitration, and class actions to remedy their situation. H.R. 1366 helps to prevent such a conflicted scheme from occurring again and does so with a reasonable transition to ensure that investors are not harmed. This bill is a compromise, bipartisan fix that provides all Americans with equal protection under our securities laws. I would urge my colleagues to support H.R. 1366.
Ranking member yields back.
Go back, the balance of my time.
The chair now recognizes himself for 5 minutes, although I assure you I will not take the 5 minutes. Just to thank the gentlelady from New York for her leadership. We enjoyed working with her on H.R. 1366. Again, it's an important bill just to take care of something that is clearly anachronistic. That will yield a lot of protections for folks in Puerto Rico and Guam and elsewhere. And so again, I thank her for her leadership, and I encourage a strong bipartisan vote. And I yield back the balance of my time. Who seeks recognition? There being no further discussion or amendments to the bill, the question now occurs on ordering the bill reported favorably to the House. Those in favor shall signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed shall signify by saying nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes appear to have it, and the ayes have it. Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, I ask for a recorded vote.
Okay, recorded vote has been requested. All those in favor of a recorded vote shall raise their hand and be counted. A sufficient number having raised their hands, a recorded vote is so ordered, and pursuant to subsection C5 of Rule 3 of the committee rules, the vote on this question is postponed. As members may know, votes have now been called on the floor. Approximately 12 minutes left in the votes. We will reconvene immediately after floor votes. The committee stands in recess. H.R. will report the bill, which was distributed in advance.
H.R. 1257 to amend the Securities and Exchange Act of 1934.
Without objection, the bill is considered read and open to amendment at any point. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Meeks, to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute. Does the gentleman have an amendment at the desk?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Copies of the amendment have already been distributed and are on the dais. The clerk will report.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute offered by Mr. Meeks. Strike all after the enacting clause and
Without
insert the
objection, the
following.
amendment is considered read and will serve as base text for purposes of amendment. The gentleman from New York is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. H.R. 1257 is a simple fix to a pesky problem. The bill simply allows the national securities exchanges to get credit for overpayments they make in transaction fees to the SEC. When these organizations underpay what they owe the SEC, they could get dinged through enforcement actions. However, when they pay too much, there is no way to get refunded or credited against future payments. My bill remedies that unfairness for institutions already harmed by this flaw and allows them to be credited against future dues, ensuring good faith. Now, Mr. Chair, New York City is home to the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ, the largest and second largest exchanges in the world, with a combined market capitalization of their stocks worth over $30 trillion. These institutions breathe life into the city and the country as a platform for the exchange of securities. They facilitate transactions that keep our economy going and growing. We owe it to them and the investors trading in the public markets to let them credit any overpayments against future payments. And I'm counting on the support of all of my colleagues just to make this simple fix pass. And I want to thank my colleagues, Mr. Holmgren, Foster, Maloney, and Hollingsworth for working with me on this bill. And, Mr. Chairman, I also, have an amendment to the bill at the desk. The last part is that the amendment to my bill would be to offer, I wanted to conform with today's bill, the bill that I have put in. With
The gentleman is, if the gentleman will yield, he's already offered that.
Okay.
That amendment. We're considering the amendment in the nature of a substitute now.
Oh. You didn't tell me that.
Does the gentleman yield back?
I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Who seeks recognition? For what purposes the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to speak in support of H.R. 1257, the Securities and Exchange Commission Overpayment Act. I want to thank my friend and colleague, Congressman Gregory Meeks from New York, for all of his hard work on this bill. Also want to thank my friends in the Senate for taking up this important legislation and passing it by voice vote earlier this morning. H.R. 1257 would allow the SEC to effectively refund fees overpaid by self-regulatory organizations such as the Chicago Stock Exchange. This would be accomplished by offsetting previous overpayments against future payments under a 10-year statute of limitations. In 2008, the Chicago Stock Exchange discovered more than $150,000 in overpayment for 2007 Section 31 fees after transitioning to a new electronic trading model. Similarly, in 2014, NASDAQ discovered around $750,000 in Section 31 fee overpayments from 2013. These exchanges overpaid out of an abundance of caution rather than risk an enforcement action by the SEC for underpayment. The SEC has not refunded these overpayments because they believe they lack statutory authority to do so. H.R. 1257 would clarify this statutory authority. Mary Jo White, the former chair of the SEC, wrote a letter to this committee in 2013 recommending that, and I quote, the commission be permitted to effect refunds by allowing an SRO to offset previous Section 31 overpayments against future Section 31 payments. This would clarify the commission has the authority to follow this approach to effect that refund, period, end of quote. H.R. 1257 is a simple legislative fix with support among securities of exchanges and the SEC itself. This legislation also received unanimous support from this committee last Congress. Again, I want to thank Congressman Meeks for his work, and I would urge all my colleagues to support it again. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Who seeks recognition? The chair will yield to himself just briefly to say I want to thank the gentleman from New York, the gentleman from Illinois, again, working on a bipartisan basis. Small problem, big solution. Glad it's been taken care of. I urge a strong bipartisan vote. I yield back. Who seeks recognition? There being no further discussion or amendments to the bill, the question now occurs on adoption of the substitute amendment offered by the gentleman from New York. All those in favor shall signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed shall signify by saying nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The question now occurs on ordering the bill as amended, reported to the House with a favorable recommendation. Those in favor shall signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed shall signify by saying nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes appear to have. For what purposes, gentleman from California? A recorded vote has been requested. All those in favor of a recorded vote shall raise their hand and be counted. A sufficient number having raised their hands, a recorded vote is so ordered, and pursuant to subsection C5 of Rule 3 of the committee rules, the vote on this question is postponed. Now, pursuant to notice, I call up H.R. 1343. The clerk will report the bill, which was distributed in advance.
H.R. 1343, to direct the Securities and Exchange Commission to revise its rules.
Without objection, the bill is considered read and open to amendment at any point. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Holtgren, the sponsor of the legislation, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Today I'm pleased to speak in support of H.R. 1343, the Encouraging Employee Ownership Act of 2017, or EEOA. I first want to start by thanking my good friend and colleague, Congressman John Delaney, for his steadfast support in advancing this legislation. Very grateful for his help and thoughts in this. I'd also like to thank my other original co-sponsors, including Steve Stivers, Kirsten Sinema, Tom MacArthur, and Brian Higgins. I was also pleased to hear that the Senate Banking Committee passed this legislation without amendment by voice vote this morning. The Encouraging Employee Ownership Act is simple. It raises the outdated threshold for enhanced disclosure from $5 million to $10 million, keeping pace with inflation. The EEOA increases opportunities for employee stock ownership, which is important to boosting a company's performance and crucial to saving for the future. When the company succeeds, the employee succeeds. EEOA would make it easier for companies in Illinois and nationwide to let hardworking employees own a stake in the business they are part of. When employees have a stake in the company they work for, their sense of ownership over details, large and small, make a real difference to the bottom line and, just as importantly, to the quality of life of the employee. The business, in turn, receives a large boost in productivity, enabling it to expand its reach and invest in new technologies and equipment. This benefit also helps companies attract top talent, even if the company is just starting out. Warren Ribley, President and CEO of the Illinois Biotechnology Industry Organization, or iBio, which represents companies that employ thousands of residents in my district, believes that making it easier for companies to offer employee ownership helps Illinois businesses expand and hire more workers. He told me, and I quote, "As someone who has worked in economic development for most of my career, I know that offering an ownership stake to employees is a critical tool in recruiting top talent to job-generating companies, and there is no doubt that an equity stake encourages employees to drive hard for success of that enterprise," end quote. Unfortunately, some companies are shying away from offering employee ownership because of the regulations that limit how much ownership they can safely offer. SEC Rule 701 mandates various disclosures for privately held companies that sell more than $5 million worth in securities per year for employee compensation. In 1999, the SEC arbitrarily set this threshold at $5 million without a concrete explanation for why investors would experience difficulties with sales above this number. For businesses who want to offer more stock to more employees, this rule forces those businesses to make disclosures that could greatly damage future innovations if they fell into the wrong hands. The Encouraging Employee Ownership Act would address this problem and open up more opportunities for employees to share in the companies they work for every day. EEOA builds off the Jobs Act reform to Rule 12G, which increased the numbers of shareholders of record that a company could have without SEC registration from 500 to 2,000 and exempted employee compensation securities from the registration requirements. This idea, championed in the Jobs Act, that the law should treat employee compensation securities differently than traditional securities, has not been extended to SEC Rule 701. My bill is a simple bipartisan fix to change that. EEOA amends SEC Rule 701 to raise this disclosure threshold from $5 million to $10 million and adjust the threshold for inflation every 5 years. To be clear, issuers that are exempt from disclosure would still have to comply with all pertinent anti-fraud and civil liabilities requirements. Support for this effort to improve the utility of Rule 701 can actually be found in the SEC's own Government Business Forum on Small Business Capital Formation final reports for 2001, 2004, 2005, and 2013. This bill aims at making sure more employees in a business are offered a stake. Do we want businesses to reserve employee ownership only for senior level executives? Under my bill, they will not be forced to make that decision because of this easier and safer method of offering ownership to more employees. The EEOA will empower all levels of business and help create a stronger working middle class. In closing, I'd like to reemphasize to my colleagues that this bill is nothing more than an inflation adjustment. We should applaud employee ownership from the shop floor to the boardroom. Again, I'd like to thank Chairman Hensarling for including this important legislation in this markup, and would urge all of my colleagues to vote in support of this very bipartisan legislation. With that, I yield
Would
back.
you yield to the chairman?
Be happy to yield to
I
the
thank the
chairman.
gentleman for yielding, and I know that he has been a great leader in this area and in assuring that our small businesses can thrive, particularly our high-tech startups, and the ability to share their success, the opportunity for success with their employees is an important one. Again, this is essentially indexing for inflation, something that I don't think has been looked at since 1999. It's an important piece of legislation passed on a bipartisan basis this morning on the other side of the Capitol. I would urge all members to support it now. I yield back to the gentleman from Illinois. I assume he yields back.
I do yield back.
To the chair, who seeks recognition? For what purpose does the gentleman from Maryland seek recognition?
Move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I also want to thank my good friend from Illinois for giving me this opportunity to work with him on this very much common sense piece of legislation. And he did a very nice job summarizing the bill, so I'll focus my comments more on thinking about the bill in context of what's really happening in the world. Private companies decide to go public for really 4 reasons, or they decide not to go public for 4 reasons, either because they're too small and they don't have sufficient scale, or they want to preserve the confidentiality of their business, or because they don't want to lose control of the business, or because they're worried about the increased costs associated with being public. For whatever the reason, the decision to go public or not to go public is in the decision of the owners of the private companies. And increasingly, companies are deciding to stay private, in part because there's lots of private capital alternatives available to them, and they don't need to go to the public markets to access capital like they used to in the past. But that doesn't mean they don't want to give their employees ownership in the company, nor does it mean that the employees don't want ownership in the company. Companies understand that if they have more employee ownership, they develop a much better corporate culture, and as my colleague from Illinois says, the employees are much more focused on the performance of the whole enterprise. Under the theory that you don't wash the rent-a-car, you tend to wash the car you own, and the same is true with respect to employees and whether they have a real stake in the ownership of the company. It also reduces turnover, which is one of the main costs that a business has. But, Mr. Chairman, it's also very good for the employees. The data suggests that companies that have high employee ownership, when recessions come, they tend to lay off fewer people because they have that strong connectivity with their employees who are also owners. And it's been proven also across time, not in every situation, but across time, that stock ownership is, generally speaking, better than the alternatives that employees might do with their compensation. So this is really good for everyone, and I have some personal experience with this. Having started 2 private businesses that later went public, and having given my employees a substantial amount of stock in the company, which was good for me and good for them, and I would have hated being in a conversation at the end of the year when we were talking about compensation and been in a position where I wanted to give my employees stock compensation and they wanted to take it. I would hate to say that the government is not letting me do it. Because it seems to me there's no reason for the government to somewhat arbitrarily interfere in this relationship between companies and employees with respect to stock ownership and stock participation and having an opportunity to benefit from the upside that comes from owning part of the U.S. economy. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back, who seeks recognition. For what purpose is a gentlelady from
Move
California?
to strike the last word.
The gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman and members, while many of the bills we are marking up today are non-controversial and have broad bipartisanship, it pains me to say that it's not true of 1343, a bill that does nothing to facilitate capital formation. Instead, this bill eliminates important disclosures that private companies must provide to their employees in the event that they're compensating those employees with stock. Currently, private companies can and do provide more than $5 million worth of stock compensation over a 12-month period to their employees. But if they do so, the companies must make relatively simple disclosures to those employees, including 2 years of financial statements, which don't even need to be audited, and information about the risk associated with investment in the securities. I agree with Professor Teresa Galbadon, who, in opposing this bill, testified before our subcommittee last Congress that employees deserve no less protection than other investors. They may be even more susceptible to suggestion and may be at a disadvantage compared to other minority shareholders who may receive more information pursuant to other securities law exemptions. I also agree with Professor Mercer Bullard, who echoed certain similar concerns in his testimony before the subcommittee and noted that to take advantage of the bill, an issuer would have at least $34 million in total assets. Such minimal disclosures wouldn't be viewed as too burdensome for companies of this size. Moreover, Professor Bullard pointed out that obvious flaws with the bill's title, the Encouraging Employee Ownership Act. There are obvious flaws with this title, since the bill does nothing to encourage more employees to own stock and share in the future gains of their employer. Rather, the bill only encourages employers to own more of their employer's stock, exposing them to concentration risk in their retirement accounts. I understand that some proponents of H.R. 1343 claim that such an exemption is needed because disclosure by companies of this information to employees runs the risk that confidential information may be leaked to competitors. However, employees with access to such information would be subject to non-disclosure agreements as they typically are today. Indeed, non-disclosure agreements are a simple solution that protects the company but does not deny employees the right to understand the worth of or the risk associated with their compensation as the bill would. Similarly, investor advocates have pointed out that it would not be in an employee's self-interest to disclose such information to competitors because it would negatively affect the value of their company stock and thus reduce their compensation. Lastly, I'm concerned with the bill's impact given that Section 502 of the Jobs Act made it easier for private companies to remain private by exempting employees who receive stock as a result of a compensation plan from the count on holders of record. Because the Jobs Act allowed companies to stay private longer, if not forever, H.R. 1343 could allow companies to encourage overinvestment by employees in a company that they cannot value and that may never permit them to sell except back to the company. So I oppose this bill, and just let me say, I think that the authors have good intentions, but I'm reminded of Enron, and I'm reminded that husband and wife, in some instances, both worked for Enron, and both were invested in Enron, encouraged by Enron to invest in the company. And of course, you know what happened to Enron, and they lost everything. And so I don't think it's too much to ask of a private company to disclose the value of the stock. Don't forget, you are compensating these employees with stock. They should know the value of them. They should know basic information about them, and I would just ask for a no vote on this bill.
Who seeks, the gentleman from New Jersey is recognized. For what purpose is the gentleman recognized?
Move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to associate myself with the remarks of my good friend from Maryland, Mr. Delaney. I, like him, ran private company, and one of the greatest privileges of my career, really my life, was taking a small company with one individual shareholder, me, and involving other people, and helping to grow it, and watching my colleagues get enthused about growing it. Today, that company has 6,000 employees. And part of the growing of that company was involving people, not just as employees, but as owners, getting them invested actually, but also emotionally and mentally as owners of the business. I think morale improved, performance improved, people thought longer term. And I'd like to say to those that are concerned about this bill, not everything gets better just because we have government control, just because we get bureaucrats involved in exposing every detail of the business, and it might be bad for the business. I can imagine quite easily an owner of a business deciding not to give stock to employees for the simple reason that they don't want the world to know the details of their business. So some things sound great in theory. They sound great as an ideology. Let's be more transparent and let's have government control it. But they don't work out that way for real people. And I think real employees of small companies, and with all due respect to the ranking member, I don't think this bill is talking about Enron. I think this is talking about small companies. In reality, passing this, giving encouragement to small business people to share the wealth, to invest their employees in the business can do nothing but benefit those employees. I see nothing but good that can come out of it, and I would encourage...
Will the gentleman yield?
Of course.
I'd like to ask if the gentleman understands that you can give up to $5 million compensating your employees without disclosure, and so what you're talking about is a higher amount of stock?
Reclaiming
Yes.
my time. I do understand the bill, but we're talking about, I believe, an opportunity for businesses to enrich their employees, and I see nothing but good that can come out of that, and I would encourage my colleagues to support the bill. It's a good bill. It's a bipartisan bill, and I would note that the co-sponsor of the bill is somebody who's been there. Again, my colleague from Maryland who's lived it and knows that there's value in this kind of...
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. I want to thank my good friend from New Jersey for his comments. And I do respect the opinions of the ranking member, but I do think respectfully that they're more theoretical than practical, because while there are examples of employees in situations like Enron and any company that has problems where people receive stock, they thought it was worth a certain amount of money and it went down, there's also all the examples of employees who have fundamentally changed their lives because they've been part of a successful private company and received stock. And that was an amazing opportunity for them. And as a practical matter, I think companies will absolutely not give stock to their employees if it triggers disclosure. So while the bill may not encourage them to give more stock, the current state of affairs discourages them from giving it. And as the gentleman from New Jersey referenced, he had a personal experience with this, and as did I. I can tell you that I would not have given stock to my employees if I had to disclose the financial condition of my company when it was private, or at least set myself up for potential liability. And I gave stock to well over 100 of my colleagues in starting these two businesses, which collectively became worth well over $100 million. So while there's examples of people who have probably lost money associated with them, we have to weigh that in the context of all the employee stock ownership that has been given out that has fundamentally changed the trajectory of people's lives and their children and their family. And I just think, as my friend from New Jersey said so eloquently, we're really giving them an opportunity to own a piece of the American dream. And why would the government want to deny them that opportunity for reasons that are not clear to me at all what the government's interest in this are? Because it's really not taking away disclosure.
Just reclaiming my time, because I've only got a few seconds, I want to reiterate, I think I'm in the same boat as my friend from Maryland. I don't know that I would have given stock had I had disclosure requirements. So it's a good bill. I urge us to support it, and my time has expired.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purposes does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
I'd like to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Okay. I also want to introduce the right version of our trade deficit clock. With regard to the budget deficit, you can argue that we have budget deficits because we invest in education, we invest in infrastructure. The trade deficit, which is only the trade deficit since 1980, has no good side. It represents jobs lost to foreign competitors. And I hope very much, as we see the Trump administration develop, that both clocks will turn more slowly. In fact, they're turning as quickly now as they have in recent memory. As to the bill in front of us, I support it. It does nothing more than republish the rule that was adopted by a Democratic majority on the SEC in 1999. Back then, the figure was $5 million. We've had more than a doubling of prices since then, so this sets the figure at $10 million. And I believe indexes it for the future. As to the Enron example, with Enron, they got massive disclosures, the full package of disclosures, and of course, people lost money on Enron stock. As to whether we want to encourage people to invest in their own companies, yes, there's an argument that then they're not diversified, but most of our federal policies encourage small business in which a family puts their heart, soul, and their entire being into a small company. And our tax code provides substantial benefits for employee stock ownership plans. And this is because we want to align the workers in a company with the interests of the company that they work for. So I think this bill does that. Finally, as to whether we can count on people not disclosing the information they get, people build their lives in a particular industry. If they ever leave an employer, they'll probably stay in the same industry and go to a competitor. Now, some are subject to non-compete clauses, but even then, those tend to be geographically limited. So it would be nice to say that you could disclose something to 100 employees and it would be 100% private forever. But if just one of those employees joins a competitor, then it's not private. So I see a reason for those in control of a company that's a private company to want to keep things confidential. I see a reason to encourage businesses to provide stock as compensation to their employees. It was a good policy in 1999 when a Democratic majority on the SEC adopted it, and this does nothing more than update that policy by putting
Will
in
the gentleman yield?
I will yield to the ranking member.
Thank you very much. Let me just read something to you that may help us to understand what happened with the SEC rule. The SEC noted that many of the companies that might take advantage of Rule 701's exemption already have prepared the types of disclosures contemplated for offerings exceeding $5 million through their use of, for example, Regulation D. So I guess what I'd like to understand from the gentleman is, do you think there should be no disclosure for workers investing in a company and being compensated by stock? Should they have no information?
First, I generally support the policy that was adopted in 1999. Second, if this bill were amended to say that if you've already prepared a Reg D disclosure and you've already distributed that to more than 20 or 30 people, that you would also provide that to the employees. But in many cases, and I used to be on the charging side of this, I charge people a lot of money to put together a Reg D disclosure. And a lot of these companies do not have the disclosure package that's called for, but as the ranking member points out, some do. And where that information is only in 5 or 10 hands, I could see continuing confidentiality. If it's already in 40 or 50 hands, then perhaps trusting the employees with the information makes sense. But if I have to choose between not updating our 1999 policy and updating it, in effect just adjusting it for inflation, I will vote for the bill.
So if the gentleman would yield, what you're saying is there are some cases that you agree that they should have no disclosure.
I agree with the decision that exists in present law, has existed since 1999, has not resulted in a huge problem of which anyone is aware, continuing. And if the policy worked in 1999 and 2000 and 2001, updating it for nearly 20 years of inflation will leave us with the same policy that we did not choose to change when we were in the majority in this room. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Who seeks recognition? Gentleman from Missouri, for what purpose does he seek recognition?
Move strike last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to yield my time for the time being to the sponsor of the bill, gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Holmgren.
Thank you. And I'll be quick. We've had a lot of discussion on this. I love serving on this committee for a lot of reasons, but one of my favorite things is serving with people who've actually done amazing things. Congressman Delaney, Congressman MacArthur, some others, Congressman Sherman, who've been a part of creating things of value, things of growth, great opportunity, truly things that have changed families, changed communities, grown opportunity. I just think that is what's exciting about this committee, and so grateful for the insight that you all have showed that this works. This is the American dream. This is opening up opportunity to people who wouldn't have had the opportunity otherwise. Really agree with my colleague from California of his statement that this already works. The problem is it was set in 1999. 18 years ago, it hasn't been adjusted since. So much has happened as far as inflation and cost, and so $5 million just isn't adequate, and it's hurting the very people that some who are fighting this bill want to help. It's keeping them from opportunity. It's keeping them from sharing in that American dream. And you know, the example of Enron was a public company. As my colleague said, so much information was out there on it. I love this too because I really do think employees, more than maybe anyone else, understand what's happening in a country, in a company, understand the opportunity that could be there, that they want the opportunity to share in, and as they're doing that, allowing great growth. So again, this does not eliminate disclosures. What it does is it raises the threshold for reduced disclosure that already exists. There have never been concerns raised by the SEC or others with this reduced disclosure regime. Disclosures are problematic because they could reveal proprietary information. Much of this information, the employees know. The employees are a part of this, and again, has been stated, oftentimes they have to sign non-compete clauses or things like that if they were to leave. So for them to be able to benefit from the understanding and the knowledge, the commitment that they've got is absolutely the right thing to do. So please support this. With that, I yield back to my colleague from Missouri.
And I yield back to
Will the gentleman yield from Missouri to the chair?
Sure.
So I've got a question for the author, and through you. It's my understanding that this bill not only sets it at $10 million, but it allows for an annual inflation adjustment, correct? And
that is correct, and it's something that should have been done. If that had happened in 1999, we wouldn't be doing this today. It would have just happened again as economies have grown, as inflation has occurred. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. It was just an arbitrary number picked. It is what it is. Now it's time to change that and make it so that future Congresses don't have to come back whenever in 18 years to make this. But these opportunities continue to grow as inflation goes up, as economies grow.
I yield back.
The gentleman from Missouri yields back. For what purposes? What purposes, gentleman from Colorado seek recognition?
I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Huizinga. I want to congratulate the sponsors on this. We've had this bill before us before, supported it before. Regular order has been conducted. We've had debate. We've had witnesses. We've gotten to discuss this bill, and in my opinion, it does help employees. I want to contrast that with what's been going on the health care bill. And employees, I think, are really subject to being harmed by the bill that has not had regular order, has not had debate, has not had witnesses, has not had hearings, and we're looking at 10 to 20 million people losing their health coverage. Those are employees. Those are just regular folks that we are protecting in this bill and enhancing their opportunity. And we're going to hurt them with something that has had absolutely no debate, has not seen the light of day. You know, for instance, employers' health plans are in jeopardy under the bill as proposed by the Republicans. Age discrimination is rampant throughout the bill that apparently has been debated by Ways and Means and by Energy and Commerce, where somebody older can be charged 5 times what a younger person can be charged. That is just unbelievable, and I think maybe unconstitutional. it's clear the dozens of groups that in the one day that anybody's had to read the bill that have come out against it are adamant in their opposition. Whether it's ARP, we write today to express our opposition to the American Health Care Act. I guess that's the name of it now. American Medical Association. We cannot support the AHCA as drafted because of the expected decline in health insurance coverage. The American Hospital Association, the American Cancer Society, the American Diabetes Association, Easter Seals, and on and on and on and on. So I want to compliment Mr. Hultgren for working on this bill, because this is something good for people. But I want to just express my outrage at the approach the Republican Party and the majority party has taken with respect to health coverage that is going to hurt so many people. So I don't know what you call it, Trump care, Republican care, Pay More for Less Act, but you have harmed employer-sponsored health care programs, and you are undoing the coverage for millions of people, and it's wrong. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Anyone?
Green from Texas.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Just strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My feelings are somewhat ambivalent, and I'd really like to get some additional intelligence. Usually investors invest because they know the condition of the company that they're investing in. Why would employees not be given that same opportunity? And I welcome anyone's comment. Yes, sir. I'll yield to you.
Well, it's one of these situations. First of all, many of these private companies don't have outside investors. They're family businesses, and they haven't raised capital from other investors. Secondly, investors get the information they negotiate to get. Sometime, depending upon the size of the offering and how it's structured, they're required under our securities laws to get certain disclosures. Sometimes they're not. I think, thirdly, and most importantly, in the context of what we're really thinking about here, the employee typically is getting compensation in terms of cash that is typically in line with what the position merits. And then they get additional equity compensation that maybe at most, if it's a very senior person, could comprise 20%, 25% of their total compensation. But for many employees, it's a much smaller number. So it's more designed to create connectivity between the company and the employee and vice versa. And so you shouldn't think of this as providing the bulk of someone's compensation. It's not like companies are going out there saying, work for free, here's all the stock. They're like, here's your cash compensation, here's your potential bonus in cash, and here's a stock award as additional bonus. And I think companies, if confronted with the decision as to whether they want to make disclosure for that additional stock compensation, would decide not to make the stock compensation. They'd typically pay in cash. So it's not really a question of disclosure, because if the company doesn't want the disclosure to occur, it will not occur. They will not provide the employees with the stock-based compensation, because rarely, if ever, will the value associated with giving the employee the stock to the company and the employee, which is real, outweigh a company's decision, should they decide this, that they want to keep their information confidential. So I would think of it in that context, as opposed to, it's not like they're going to their employees and making them, quote, investors in the company and providing capital to build the business. It's typically they're providing some additional stock-based compensation, which typically vests over time, to encourage retention and to reward retention if the company does well through the upside associated with owning the equity securities of the company. I yield back.
Thank you. Is it true that the major suppliers and some other creditors will have the information?
If the supplier is providing credit to a company, so if someone is selling products to a company on terms where the company that's buying it can't pay right away and have to pay in the future, then they will typically demand disclosure of the company's financial information as part of making a decision whether they want to extend that credit or not.
And if, given that this occurs with the suppliers who extend credit and other creditors, the bank would probably be in that same class, would it not?
Yeah, bank typically gets full disclosure of financial information.
I think I understand what you're saying.
The difference is, I think that's important, is oftentimes a company needs a bank to grow their business, so they will make the disclosure to a bank, and a bank is held, the confidentiality that a bank agrees to is a real confidentiality, because if they were to violate it, there's very significant consequences to the bank, and the bank actually has the money to pay the damages associated with the breach of the confidentiality. If you're giving stock to hundreds of employees, as our colleague from California said, those people leave. They typically don't think about the consequences of disclosure, right? They may not understand the disclosure. And so the company will simply decide not to give the stock. So the question here is not about whether they deserve the disclosure or not. The question is, the companies will not give the stock if they have to make the disclosure. So if we actually want the companies to actually give their employees more ownership in the business, then we have to provide the relief they need to do that. Otherwise, they won't do it.
I yield.
I just want to make sure that we talked about $5 million, but under the bill, companies would be allowed to issue $10 million in stock to their employees each year. And these shares would not count as determining whether the company is public. So I think it's important to know that information. I yield back.
We yield back.
I think
time of the gentleman has expired. Who seeks recognition? There being no other discussion or amendments to the bill, the question now occurs on ordering the bill reported favorably to the House. Those in favor shall signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed shall signify by saying nay. No. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes appear to have it. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition? A recorded vote has been requested from the gentleman from Michigan. All those in favor of a recorded vote shall raise their hand and be counted. Sufficient number having raised their hands, a recorded vote is so ordered, and pursuant to subsection C5, Rule 3 of the committee rules, the vote on this question is postponed. For what purpose does the ranking member seek
I have
recognition?
a resolution to reassign certain Democratic members to subcommittees of the committee.
Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized to offer the resolution. The clerk will report the resolution which is on the dais.
Resolution offered by Ms. Waters.
Without objection, the
Reassign-
resolution is considered read and open to amendment at any point. Without objection, the resolution is agreed to, and a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The committee will now stand in recess until 4 p.m., at which time we will take up our postponed votes. The committee stands in recess. The committee will come to order. We will now resume our consideration of pending matters. I now call up H.R. 1219. The clerk will designate the bill by title.
H.R. 1219 to amend the Investment Company Act of 1940 to expand the investor limitation for qualifying venture capital funds under an exemption from the definition of an investment company.
The question is now on reporting the bill H.R. 1219 favorably to the House. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. McHenry.
Aye.
Mr. McHenry, aye. Mr. King.
Aye.
Mr. King, aye. Mr. Royce. Mr. Royce, aye. Mr. Lucas. Mr. Lucas, aye. Mr. Pierce. Mr. Pierce, aye. Mr. Posey. Mr. Posey, aye. Mr. Lukemeyer. Mr. Lukemeyer, aye. Mr. Huizenga. Mr. Huizenga, aye. Mr. Duffy. Mr. Duffy, aye. Mr. Stivers. Mr. Stivers, aye. Mr. Hultgren. Mr. Hultgren, aye. Mr. Ross. Mr. Ross, aye. Mr. Pittenger. Mr. Pittenger, aye. Mrs. Wagner. Mrs. Wagner, aye. Mr. Barr. Mr. Barr, aye. Mr. Rothfuss. Mr. Rothfuss, aye. Mr. Messer. Mr. Messer, aye. Mr. Tipton. Mr. Tipton, aye. Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams, aye. Mr. Poliquin. Mr. Poliquin, aye. Mrs. Love. Mrs. Love, aye. Mr. Hill. Mr. Hill, aye. Mr. Emmer. Mr. Emmer, aye. Mr. Zeldin. Mr. Zeldin, aye. Mr. Trott. Mr. Trott, aye. Mr. Loudermilk. Mr. Loudermilk, aye. Mr. Mooney. Mr. Mooney, aye. Mr. MacArthur. Mr. MacArthur, aye. Mr. Davidson. Mr. Davidson, aye. Mr. Budd. Mr. Budd, aye. Mr. Kustoff. Ms. Tenney. Ms. Tenney, aye. Mr. Hollingsworth. Mr. Hollingsworth, aye. Ms. Waters. Ms. Waters, aye. Mrs. Maloney. Mrs. Maloney, aye. Ms. Vasquez. Ms. Vasquez, aye. Mr. Sherman. Mr. Sherman, aye. Mr. Meeks. Mr. Capuano. Mr. Capuano, no. Mr. Clay. Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch, no. Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Green. Mr. Green, aye. Mr. Cleaver. Mr. Cleaver, aye. Ms. Moore. Ms. Moore, aye. Mr. Ellison. Mr. Ellison, aye. Mr. Perlmutter. Mr. Perlmutter, aye. Mr. Himes. Mr. Himes, aye. Mr. Foster. Mr. Foster, aye. Mr. Kildee. Mr. Kildee, aye. Mr. Delaney. Mr. Delaney, aye. Ms. Cinema. Mrs. Beatty. Mrs. Beatty, aye. Mr. Heck. Mr. Heck, aye. Mr. Vargas. Mr. Vargas, aye. Mr. Gottheimer. Mr. Gottheimer, aye. Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Christ. Mr. Kewen. Mr. Kewen, aye. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Chairman, aye.
Is there any member who has not voted? Gentleman from Illinois, Missouri. Gentleman from New York.
Mr. Clay, aye. Mr. Meeks, aye.
Is there any other member who has not voted?
Mr. Chairman.
Is there any member, gentleman from Georgia?
I would like to change my vote so that I'm voting with the ranking member, Ms. Waters.
Mr. Green, off aye on nay.
Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott.
I'm sorry, Mr. Scott. Mr.
Is there any other member who wishes to change his or her vote? If not, the clerk will report.
What's your point?
54 to what? Mr. Chairman, the ayes are 54 and the nays are 2.
The majority having voted in favor of the bill is ordered favorably reported to the House. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Staff are authorized to make technical or conforming changes. Members will have 2 days to file views on the reported measure. I now call up H.R. 910. The clerk will designate the bill by title.
H.R. 910 to direct the Securities and Exchange Commission to provide a safe harbor related to certain investment fund research reports and for other purposes.
The question is now on reporting the bill H.R. 910 as amended favorably to the House. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. McHenry. Mr. McHenry, aye. Mr. King.
Aye.
Mr. King, aye. Mr. Royce. Mr. Royce. Mr. Royce, aye. Mr. Lucas. Mr. Lucas, aye. Mr. Pierce. Mr. Pierce, aye. Mr. Posey. Mr. Posey, aye. Mr. Lukemeyer. Mr. Lukemeyer, aye. Mr. Huizenga. Mr. Huizenga, aye. Mr. Duffy. Mr. Duffy, aye. Mr. Stivers. Mr. Stivers, aye. Mr. Hultgren. Mr. Hultgren, aye. Mr. Ross. Mr. Ross, aye. Mr. Pittenger. Mr. Pittenger, aye. Mrs. Wagner. Mrs. Wagner, aye. Mr. Barr. Mr. Barr, aye. Mr. Rothfuss. Mr. Rothfuss, aye. Mr. Messer. Mr. Messer, aye. Mr. Tipton. Mr. Tipton, aye. Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams, aye. Mr. Poliquin. Mr. Poliquin, aye. Mrs. Love. Mrs. Love, aye. Mr. Hill. Mr. Hill, aye. Mr. Emmer. Mr. Emmer, aye. Mr. Zeldin. Mr. Zeldin, aye. Mr. Trott. Mr. Trott, aye. Mr. Loudermilk. Mr. Loudermilk, aye. Mr. Mooney. Mr. Mooney, aye. Mr. MacArthur. Mr. MacArthur, aye. Mr. Davidson. Mr. Davidson, aye. Mr. Budd. Mr. Budd, aye. Mr. Kustoff. Ms. Tenney. Ms. Tenney, aye. Mr. Hollingsworth. Mr. Hollingsworth, aye. Ms. Waters. Ms. Waters, aye. Mrs. Maloney. Mrs. Maloney, aye. Ms. Velasquez. Ms. Velasquez, aye. Mr. Sherman. Mr. Sherman, aye. Mr. Meeks. Mr. Meeks, aye. Mr. Capuano. Mr. Capuano, no. Mr. Clay. Mr. Clay, aye. Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch, no. Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott, aye. Mr. Green. Mr. Green, aye. Mr. Cleaver. Mr. Cleaver, aye. Ms. Moore. Ms. Moore, aye. Mr. Ellison. Mr. Ellison, aye. Mr. Perlmutter. Mr. Perlmutter, aye. Mr. Himes. Mr. Himes, aye. Mr. Foster. Mr. Foster, aye. Mr. Kildee.
The
Mr. Kildee, aye.
Clerk will suspend. Committee will come to order, please. The clerk cannot hear the votes. The committee will come to order.
I'm going to read the last line.
Committee will come to order. The clerk will proceed.
Mr. Delaney. Mr. Delaney, aye. Ms. Sinema. Mrs. Beatty. Mrs. Beatty, aye. Mr. Heck. Mr. Heck, aye. Mr. Vargas. Mr. Vargas, aye. Mr. Gottheimer. Mr. Gottheimer, aye. Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Gonzalez, aye. Mr. Christ. Mr. Kewen. Mr. Kewen, aye. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Chairman, aye.
Is there any member who has not voted? Is there any member who wishes to change his or her vote? If not, the clerk.
If I go like that, it
Gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Christ votes aye.
Is there any other member who has not voted? Is there any other member who wishes to change his or her vote? If not, the clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, the ayes are 56 and the nays are 2.
A majority having voted in favor of the bill as amended, that bill as amended is ordered favorably reported to the House. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Staff are authorized to make technical or conforming changes. Members will have 2 days to file views on the reported measure. I now call up H.R. 1312. The clerk will designate the bill by title.
H.R. 1312 to amend the Small Business Investment Incentive Act of 1980 to require an annual review of the Securities and Exchange Commission of an annual government business forum on capital formation that is held pursuant to such act.
The question is now on reporting the bill, H.R. 1312, as amended favorably to the House. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. McHenry. Mr. McHenry, aye. Mr. King. Mr. King, aye. Mr. Royce. Mr. Royce, aye. Mr. Lucas. Mr. Lucas, aye. Mr. Pierce. Mr. Pierce, aye. Mr. Posey. Mr. Posey, aye. Mr. Lukemeyer. Mr. Lukemeyer, aye. Mr. Huizenga. Mr. Huizenga, aye. Mr. Duffy. Mr. Duffy, aye. Mr. Stivers. Mr. Stivers, aye. Mr. Hulkren. Mr. Hulkren, aye. Mr. Ross. Mr. Ross, aye. Mr. Pittenger. Mr. Pittenger, aye. Mrs. Wagner. Mrs. Wagner, aye. Mr. Barr.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Mr. Barr, aye. Mr. Rothfuss. Mr. Rothfuss, aye. Mr. Messer. Mr. Messer, aye. Mr. Tipton. Mr. Tipton, aye. Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams, aye. Mr. Poliquin. Mr. Poliquin, aye. Mrs. Love. Mrs. Love, aye. Mr. Hill. Mr. Hill, aye. Mr. Emmer. Mr. Emmer, aye. Mr. Zeldin. Mr. Zeldin, aye. Mr. Trott. Mr. Trott, aye. Mr. Loudermilk. Mr. Loudermilk, aye. Mr. Mooney. Mr. Mooney, aye. Mr. MacArthur. Mr. MacArthur, aye. Mr. Davidson. Mr. Davidson, aye. Mr. Budd. Mr. Budd, aye. Mr. Kustoff. Ms. Tenney. Ms. Tenney, aye. Mr. Hollingsworth. Mr. Hollingsworth, aye. Ms. Waters. Ms. Waters, aye. Mrs. Maloney. Mrs. Maloney, aye. Ms. Velasquez. Ms. Velasquez, aye. Mr. Sherman. Mr. Sherman, aye. Mr. Meeks. Mr. Meeks, aye. Mr. Capuano. Mr. Capuano, aye. Mr. Clay. Mr. Clay, aye. Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch, aye. Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott, aye. Mr. Green. Mr. Green, aye. Mr. Cleaver. Mr. Cleaver, aye. Ms. Moore. Ms. Moore, aye. Mr. Ellison. Mr. Ellison, aye. Mr. Perlmutter. Mr. Perlmutter, aye. Mr. Himes. Mr. Himes, aye. Mr. Foster. Mr. Foster, aye. Mr. Kildee. Mr. Kildee, aye. Mr. Delaney. Mr. Delaney, aye. Ms. Cinema. Mrs. Beatty. Mrs. Beatty, aye. Mr. Heck. Mr. Heck, aye. Mr. Vargas. Mr. Vargas, aye. Mr. Gottheimer. Mr. Gottheimer, aye. Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Gonzalez, aye. Mr. Christ. Mr. Christ, aye. Mr. Kewen. Mr. Kewen, aye. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Chairman, aye.
Is there any member who has not voted? Is there any member who wishes to change his or her vote? If not, the clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, the ayes are 58 and the nays are 0.
Majority having voted in favor of the bill as amended, the bill as amended is ordered favorably reported to the House.
Aye, Mr. Lukemeyer. Mr. Lukemeyer, aye. Mr. Huizenga. Mr. Huizenga, aye. Mr. Duffy. Mr. Duffy, aye. Mr. Stivers. Mr. Hill, aye. Mr. Emmer. Mr. Emmer, aye. Mr. Zeldin. Mr. Zeldin, aye. Mr. Trott. Mr. Trott, aye. Mr. Loudermilk. Mr. Loudermilk, aye. Mr. Mooney. Mr. Mooney, aye. Mr. MacArthur. Mr. MacArthur, aye. Mr. Davidson. Mr. Davidson, aye. Mr. Budd. Mr. Budd, aye. Mr. Kustoff. Ms. Tenney. Ms. Tenney, aye. Mr. Hollingsworth. Mr. Hollingsworth, aye. Ms. Waters. Ms. Waters, aye. Mrs. Maloney. Mrs. Maloney, aye. Ms. Vasquez. Ms. Vasquez, aye. Mr. Sherman. Mr. Sherman, aye. Mr. Meeks. Mr. Meeks, aye. Mr. Capuano. Mr. Capuano, aye. Mr. Clay. Mr. Clay, aye. Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch, aye. Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott, aye. Mr. Green. Mr. Green, aye. Mr. Cleaver. Mr. Cleaver, aye. Ms. Moore.
Mic check 1 2.
Ms. Moore, aye. Mr. Ellison. Mr. Ellison, aye. Mr. Perlmutter. Mr. Perlmutter, aye. Mr. Himes. Mr. Himes, aye. Mr. Foster. Mr. Foster, aye. Mr. Kildee. Mr. Kildee, aye. Mr. Delaney. Mr. Delaney, aye. Ms. Cinema. Mrs. Beatty. Mrs. Beatty, aye. Mr. Heck. Mr. Heck, aye. Mr. Vargas. Mr. Vargas, aye. Mr. Gottheimer. Mr. Gottheimer, aye. Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Gonzalez, aye. Mr. Christ. Mr. Christ, aye. Mr. Kewen. Mr. Kewen, aye. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Chairman, aye.
Is there any member who has not voted? Is there any member who wishes to change his or her vote? If not, the clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, the ayes are 58 and the nays are 0.
Majority having voted in favor of the bill is ordered favorably reported to the House. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Staff are authorized to make technical or conforming changes, and members will have 2 days to file views on the reported measure. I now call up H.R. 1257. The clerk will designate the bill by title.
H.R. 1257 to amend the Securities Exchange Act of 1934 to require the Securities Exchange Commission to refund or credit excess payments made to the Commission.
The question is now reporting the bill H.R. 1257 as amended favorably to the House. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. McHenry.
Aye.
Mr. McHenry, aye. Mr. King.
Aye.
Mr. King, aye. Mr. Royce. Mr. Royce, aye. Mr. Lucas. Mr. Lucas, aye. Mr. Pierce. Mr. Pierce, aye. Mr. Posey. Mr. Posey, aye. Mr. Lukemeyer. Mr. Lukemeyer, aye. Mr. Huizenga. Mr. Huizenga, aye. Mr. Duffy. Mr. Duffy, aye. Mr. Stivers. Mr. Stivers, aye. Mr. Hulkren. Mr. Hulkren, aye. Mr. Ross. Mr. Ross, aye. Mr. Pittenger. Mr. Pittenger, aye. Mrs. Wagner. Mrs. Wagner, aye. Mr. Barr. Mr. Barr, aye. Mr. Rothfuss. Mr. Rothfuss, aye. Mr. Messer. Mr. Messer, aye. Mr. Tipton. Mr. Tipton, aye. Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams, aye. Mr. Poliquin. Mr. Poliquin, aye. Mrs. Love. Mrs. Love, aye. Mr. Hill. Mr. Hill, aye. Mr. Emmer. Mr. Emmer. Mr. Emmer, aye. Mr. Zeldin. Mr. Zeldin, aye. Mr. Trott. Mr. Trott, aye. Mr. Loudermilk. Mr. Loudermilk, aye. Mr. Mooney. Mr. Mooney, aye. Mr. MacArthur. Mr. MacArthur, aye. Mr. Davidson. Mr. Davidson, aye. Mr. Budd. Mr. Budd, aye. Mr. Kustoff. Mrs. Tenney. Ms. Tenney, aye. Mr. Hollingsworth. Mr. Hollingsworth, aye. Ms. Waters. Ms. Waters, aye. Mrs. Maloney. Mrs. Maloney, aye. Ms. Vasquez. Ms. Vasquez, aye. Mr. Sherman. Mr. Sherman, aye. Mr. Meeks. Mr. Meeks, aye. Mr. Capuano. Mr. Capuano, aye. Mr. Clay. Mr. Clay, aye. Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch, aye. Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott, aye. Mr. Green. Mr. Green, aye. Mr. Cleaver. Mr. Cleaver, aye. Ms. Moore. Ms. Moore, aye. Mr. Ellison. Mr. Ellison, aye. Mr. Perlmutter. Mr. Perlmutter, aye. Mr. Himes. Mr. Himes, aye. Mr. Foster. Mr. Foster, aye. Mr. Kildee. Mr. Kildee, aye. Mr. Delaney. Mr. Delaney, aye. Ms. Simmons, aye. Mr. Heck. Mr. Heck, aye. Mr. Vargas. Mr. Vargas, aye. Mr. Gottheimer. Mr. Gottheimer, aye. Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Gonzalez, aye. Mr. Christ. Mr. Christ, aye. Mr. Kewen. Mr. Kewen, aye. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Chairman, aye.
Is there any member who has not voted? Gentleman from Tennessee, is he?
Mr. Cuffstuff votes aye.
Is there any other member who has not voted? Any member wishes to change his or her vote? If not, the clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, the ayes are 59 and the nays are 0.
Majority having voted in favor of the bill as amended, the bill as amended is ordered favorably reported to the House. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Staff are authorized to make technical or conforming changes, and members will have 2 days to file views on the reported measure. I wish to alert members the next vote will be the last vote. If members choose to exit after casting their vote, please exit quietly from the hearing room. I now call up H.R. 1343. The clerk will designate the bill by title.
H.R. 1343 to direct the Securities and Exchange Commission to revise its rules so as to increase the threshold amount for requiring issuers to provide certain disclosures relating to compensatory benefit plans.
The question is now in reporting the bill, H.R. 1343, favorably to the House. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. McHenry. Mr. McHenry, aye. Mr. King. Mr. King, aye. Mr. Royce. Mr. Royce, aye. Mr. Lucas. Mr. Lucas, aye. Mr. Pierce. Mr. Pierce, aye. Mr. Posey. Mr. Posey, aye. Mr. Lukemeyer. Mr. Lukemeyer, aye. Mr. Huizenga. Mr. Huizenga, aye. Mr. Duffy. Mr. Duffy, aye. Mr. Stivers. Mr. Stivers, aye. Mr. Hulkren. Mr. Hulkren, aye. Mr. Ross. Mr. Ross, aye. Mr. Pittenger. Mr. Pittenger, aye. Mrs. Wagner. Mrs. Wagner, aye. Mr. Barr. Mr. Barr, aye. Mr. Rothfuss. Mr. Rothfuss, aye. Mr. Messer. Mr. Messer, aye. Mr. Tipton. Mr. Tipton, aye. Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams, aye. Mr. Poliquin. Mr. Poliquin, aye. Mrs. Love. Mrs. Love, aye. Mr. Hill. Mr. Hill, aye. Mr. Emmer. Mr. Emmer, aye. Mr. Zeldin. Mr. Zeldin, aye. Mr. Trott. Mr. Trott, aye. Mr. Loudermilk. Mr. Loudermilk, aye. Mr. Mooney. Mr. Mooney, aye. Mr. MacArthur. Mr. MacArthur, aye. Mr. Davidson. Mr. Davidson, aye. Mr. Budd. Mr. Budd, aye. Mr. Kustoff. Mr. Kustoff, aye. Ms. Tenney. Ms. Tenney, aye. Mr. Hollingsworth. Mr. Hollingsworth, aye. Ms. Waters. Ms. Waters, no. Mrs. Maloney. Mrs. Maloney, aye. Ms. Vasquez.
Which abolishes Obamacare's tax penalties for those.
I'm sorry.
The clerk will suspend.
Ms. Vasquez, no.
The clerk will proceed.
Mr. Sherman. Mr. Sherman, aye. Mr. Meeks. Mr. Meeks, aye. Mr. Capuano. Mr. Capuano, aye. Mr. Clay. Mr. Clay, no. Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch, no. Mr. Scott.
How are the ayes there?
Mr. Scott, aye. Mr. Green. Mr. Green, no. Mr. Cleaver. Mr. Cleaver, no. Ms. Moore. Ms. Moore, no. Mr. Ellison. Mr. Ellison, no. Mr. Perlmutter. Mr. Perlmutter, aye. Mr. Himes. Mr. Himes, aye. Mr. Foster. Mr. Foster, aye. Mr. Kildee. Mr. Kildee, no. Mr. Delaney. Mr. Delaney, aye. Ms. Sinema. Mrs. Beatty. Mrs. Beatty, no. Mr. Heck. Mr. Heck, aye. Mr. Vargas. Mr. Vargas, aye. Mr. Gottheimer. Mr. Gottheimer, aye. Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Gonzalez, aye. Mr. Christ. Mr. Christ, aye. Mr. Kewen. Mr. Kewen, aye. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Chairman, aye.
Is there any member who has not voted? Is there any member who wishes to change his or her vote?
American Medical Association
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
both supported Obamacare, but they both have come out against the GOP bill.
How's the gentleman from Massachusetts recorded?
Mr. Capuano, you are recorded as an aye. Okay, off
Gentleman
aye
from
on
Massachusetts, off aye on no. Is there any other member who wishes to change his or her vote? If not, the clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, the ayes are 48 and the nays are 11.
A majority having voted in favor of the bill is ordered favorably reported to the House. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Staff are authorized to make technical or conforming changes, and members will have 2 days to file views on the reported measure. There being no further business pending, the committee stands adjourned.
When it passes there, it will move to the full House for a vote. Now,